Hi, Body Bags listeners. I want you to take a listen to the brand new morning news podcast. It's a mix of the headlines covering the biggest stories people are talking about, from national news to politics to true crime. Hosted by Caitlyn Becker. It's called the NYPOSTcast, and it's from the New York Post. Take a listen. I think you'll enjoy this episode.
Our greatest evangelist for liberty became immortal. That's how President Trump paid tribute to Charlie Kirk at a memorial attended by tens of thousands. I have all the details from the emotional service. Plus, the latest on a horrific mass shooting at a New Hampshire wedding. What the shooter yelled during the attack could offer clues to a possible motive. And the kids aren't all right. Senator Ron Wyden's children have been blamed for driving his wife's assistant to commit suicide, according to a bombshell lawsuit. Those stories and more today, Monday, September 22nd. I'm Caitlyn Becker, and this is the New York Postcast. He's a martyr now. That's just part of how President Trump helped lay Charlie Kirk to rest in front of a football stadium filled with mourners in Arizona. The president described the shock he felt when he learned of Kirk's death and said he believed that Kirk was killed because he was winning on what he called progressive college campuses. Trump also shared the last words Charlie said to him, quote, "Please, sir, save Chicago." The president promised to do just that, as he has for several weeks now, to send the National Guard and federal agents to the city to curb crime. The most emotional moments, though, as you'd expect, they came from Kirk's widow, Erica.
My husband, Charlie, he wanted to save young men, just like the one who took his life. That man, that young man, I forgive him.
Other speakers who took the stage included Donald Trump Jr., Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and Vice President J.D. Vance, who ended his speech by speaking right to Charlie, saying, quote, "I love you, my friend. We've got it from here." Now to New Hampshire, where one couple's fairy tale day turned into an absolute nightmare when a gunman stormed into the Sky Meadow Country Club in Nashua and opened fire during their wedding, leaving one dead and several others injured. 23-year-old Hunter Nadeau was later ID'd as the alleged shooter armed with a handgun. One wedding guest who was killed is being hailed a hero. Witnesses say Robert DeCesar went after the gunman as soon as he kicked through the door of the dining room in an attempt to protect his family. The father of two was shot and killed while two others were injured by the shooter. Other injuries were sustained as roughly 100 wedding guests ran for cover. One witness said it appeared as if the shooter was specifically going after DeCesar, but police haven't indicated whether or not he was actually targeted. Another witnesses reported Nadeau shouted, "Free Palestine," during the shooting. The alleged shooter was promptly taken into custody. He's been charged with second-degree murder and is set to be arraigned later today. And while Nadeau's motive is unclear at this point, his apparent shouting of "Free Palestine" suggests this might be the latest instance of the polarizing topic turning violent here in the U.S. But globally, the tide is taking a different turn. This week marks the beginning of the high-profile meeting of the UN General Assembly in New York. The UK, Canada, and Australia all took the opportunity to officially recognize a Palestinian state. And while the move was largely expected, it was still met with outrage from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Late-night host Jimmy Kimmel's representatives are reportedly in discussions with Disney over how his situation, post-Charlie Kirk comments, and subsequent indefinite suspension can be resolved. Their goal is for Kimmel to be able to resume taping and get back on the air. The sideline star is said to be concerned for his crew, according to sources who talked to Vanity Fair, and what a permanent cancellation would mean for their livelihoods. An insider notes that a lot of them are still trying to recover from the 2023 actors strike that took the show off the air, which stopped paychecks. Meanwhile, Kimmel got some surprising support, I guess we'll call it, from Republican Senator Ted Cruz. While the Texas lawmaker was careful to note that he was not a fan of Kimmel's, he also criticized FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr's threats to revoke ABC's broadcast license as something out of a, quote, mafioso playbook. Here's some of what he said on his podcast on Friday.
I hate what Jimmy Kimmel said. I am thrilled that he was fired. But let me tell you, if the government gets in the business of saying,
what you
we
can and
don't
can't
like
say
what you, the media, have said, we're going to ban you from the airwaves if you don't say what we like. That will end up bad for conservatives.
President Trump spent part of his weekend calling for former FBI Director James Comey, Senator Adam Schiff, and New York Attorney General Letitia James to be prosecuted by the Justice Department swiftly, saying all three are, quote, guilty as hell, but nothing is going to be done. Guilty as hell of what? He didn't say. But the president also claimed to have reviewed 30 statements and posts, saying Attorney General Pam Bondi's team at the DOJ is, quote, all talk, no action. The president has sung the praises of Bondi several times since taking office for a second term, but now he's pressuring her to do more to prosecute people perceived as his enemies. The president complained that Bondi's Justice Department nominated a, quote, Democrat-supported U.S. attorney in Virginia. That man, Eric Siebert, had his nomination withdrawn over the weekend and was replaced by Trump's former attorney, Lindsay Halligan. So is Bondi really in the hot seat, and should the people Trump name-checked be worried too? The Post's political reporter Ryan King has been following all of this, and he joins me now. So Ryan, let's start with Pam Bondi. The president previously was a Bondi stan, praising her work for the D.C. crime crackdown and his plans for the kind of sequel that he wanted to see in Memphis. Now he's taking jabs at her at Truth Social, and then an hour later praising her again. He's hot and he's cold. So what exactly is Pam Bondi's status in Trump world?
Yeah, well, I think President Trump clearly put her on notice. He made clear later on that he is supporting her and still believes that she's doing a great job, but he made sure to list out a few complaints that he had with her, particularly over the DOJ's handling of investigations into three of his rivals. In particular, he was also unhappy with how she handled the federal attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia, Eric Siebert, who, of course, is in charge of, or had been in charge of overseeing the investigation into Letitia James. Trump recently, over the weekend, moved to oust him. And it was, pretty dramatic for the president to go on Truth Social and to criticize the DOJ for not being more aggressive in investigating his rivals. Now, he did, again, walk it back in a subsequent Truth Social post, but then to reporters, when he was questioned about this, he said that he just wants to get these issues resolved. And he said that he thinks it's just taking too long, regardless of whether or not there's evidence to ultimately prosecute them. He just wants this issue to be settled. Now, as for Bondi standing in MAGA world generally, I'd say it's pretty fair to say that she's underwater right now. She might be okay with President Trump, but, on somewhat thin ice with him. But like with MAGA stars such as Steve Bannon, Megyn Kelly, Laura Loomer, etc., it's very clear that they're not happy with her because of a number of things that she's done, particularly her handling of the Epstein drama. And then more recently, her suggestion that the government can go after hate speech. She said that last week, and that kicked up a bit of a firestorm. And there are multiple conservative stars that called for her to be fired.
Yeah, there's really two lenses to view her through right now, her relationship with the president and the Trump administration and with the president's base and the MAGA following. So that there is a bit of a differentiation there. Now, you mentioned Letitia James there, and I want to dig a little deeper into the president's beef with the New York AG. The issue here is also connected to the Virginia U.S. attorney drama, as you said. So can you just explain a little bit of what the heck is going on here? Where does the real issue, where's it rooted?
Yeah, and this really seemed to be the issue that kind of was a big undercurrent in the president's criticism of Bondi. So Letitia James had, of course, overseen a big investigation into the Trump organization and ultimately brought forward a civil case against his business empire. And that resulted in a $500 million fine that was recently overturned by an appeals court. But that, of course, angered President Trump. And the federal prosecutor that had been in charge of investigating this, Eric Siebert, who the president recently ousted, Trump was complaining that he was basically dragging his feet in this investigation. It wasn't being more aggressive. And his investigation into Letitia James really revolved around accusations that surfaced in April of mortgage fraud. And it's really technical stuff. But the president felt that the DOJ just has not been making enough progress quickly enough on that case. And he was particularly concerned that that federal prosecutor that he ousted had the support of two Democrats. So he was ripping him as a rhino, and he was kind of blaming Pam Bondi for him being in that acting role. And he recently, of course, replaced him over the weekend. And again, this is just really, I think, the big undercurrent between the president slashing out at Pam Bondi.
I want to just turn your attention to the other names that the president rattled off in that Truth Social kind of tirade that he had, Schiff and Comey. So what is President Trump asking of Bondi in those cases?
Yeah, he was a little bit less specific, but I think his general complaint was that those cases are still being too slow, that the DOJ isn't making enough progress fast enough on those fronts. So this includes accusations of mortgage fraud by Adam Schiff. Now, Schiff, like Letitia James, has, of course, denied this. It also includes Russiagate concerns about James Comey. All three of these people have been really, really prominent adversaries of President Trump, particularly during his last administration and in the time in between his two terms in the White House. So it is pretty significant. And I should note also that President Trump really had beefed with his prior two attorney generals during his first administration. He really had big beef with Jeff Sessions and then later with Bill Barr. So he does have a history of kind of clashing with the head of the DOJ.
He definitely does seem to not only have a history of the clashes, but that kind of roller coaster of up and down, up and down, up and down, support, not supporting, support, not supporting. So I guess we are seeing a bit of rinse and repeat as we have seen previously. Thank you so much for joining us, Ryan.
Yes, thank you.
A new lawsuit is making disturbing claims that the children of Oregon Senator Ron Wyden bullied a personal assistant working for the family to the point of suicide. Brandon O'Brien worked for the Democratic senator's wife, Nancy, owner of the famous Strand bookstore in New York. And according to court docs, he was often tasked with taking care of the couple's children. Now, when I said the claims in this case were disturbing, I not only meant the suicide itself, but also the twisted things the family is accused of doing. Skip ahead 60 seconds if you don't want to hear it. The suit, which was filed by Brandon's husband, claims the Wydens' then 10-year-old daughter allegedly exposed herself to O'Brien, making, quote, sexually explicit comments and asked about his, quote, intimate life during school drop-offs. The senator's teenaged son is accused in the suit of taunting O'Brien with homophobic slurs and threatening him physically. And in one alleged violent encounter, Nancy Wyden reportedly tried to mace her son in an effort to restrain him, but hit O'Brien instead. Now, Wyden's lawyers are seeking to get this lawsuit tossed, calling it, quote, baseless and deeply misguided, riddled with false accusations. Now, O'Brien quit in frustration in September of 2024, and at the time, Nancy Wyden accused him of stealing $650,000. He then took his own life this past May. And finally today, a dating app love story. Maybe. A woman on Hinge is ready to play ball with one suitor for a very interesting reason. This single lady posted a picture of herself at a baseball game on the app, and she asked prospective dates if they could tell where she was. One guy replied, not just with the location, but the date of the game and even the inning during which the photo was snapped. His bizarrely specific guess was right. The location, arguably pretty easy to guess. Any Yankee fan and many Yankee haters could easily see it was taken at Yankee Stadium. The rest of it was some CIA-level work. The guy deduced the rest based on the fact that the Baltimore Orioles in the field include their catcher and pitcher, and the time of the year on the clothing being worn in the stands. Yeah, it's a lot. The online reactions were split between A for effort and S for scared the girl away. Now, the Post was not able to confirm whether or not the two actually ever went on a date, but my fingers are crossed, both for their potential love match and for her head not ending up in his freezer. Maybe he just likes puzzles. Maybe he's really smart. Maybe he'd be ace at trivia or an escape room. Maybe she'll need to escape from shackles in his basement. Love is a gamble, my friends. But there is no gamble with this podcast, though. I'm here for you 5 days a week, so like and follow the New York Postcast wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. And for everything else you need to know on this fine Monday morning, head to the New York Post in print or online. I'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the NYPOSTcast. If you enjoyed it, like and subscribe today, wherever you get your podcast.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.